Our minds are hardwired to make distinctions between things so that we can make good decisions. So then why in meditation do we practice non-judgment? And if we think something is good about non-judgment, then isn't that self a judgment? Doesn't make any sense. That is the subject of this Torah of Awakening on Parshat Re'eh. Before we begin, if you like this video and you want to support, you can give the video a like, subscribe to the channel, leave a comment. I'd love to hear from you and I will respond personally. And click the bell to get notified when we go live on YouTube 5 days a week. And now, on with the teaching. Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu. There's a wonderful story of a Jewish farmer who is poor. He has a son who helps him out, nice, strong, young dude. And he has an old horse, which is not the best, but still gets the job done. And one day the horse escapes somehow, and so he's left with no animal to help with the work. And so the villagers, when they see what has happened, they all come to him and they say, "Oi, Moishi, what has happened to you? What avera have you done? What sin have you done to bring this curse upon you to lose your only workhorse?" And Moshe says, okay, well, maybe blessing, maybe curse. We don't really know. That Friday, the horse returns with a herd of wild horses with it. He says, oh my God, he runs. He tells his son, who's able to gather them all into the fencing. The villagers once again come to him and they say, Oi, Moishi, what a tzaddik you must be. You must have done some great mitzvah, some great act of service to have such blessing bestowed upon you by HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It turns out it wasn't a curse at all. Look what happened. Moshe said, I know, but still, maybe blessing, maybe curse. We don't know. A few days later, the son is working with the wild horses, trying to break them in, trying to turn them into domestic horses, and one of the wild ones throws him off. He falls, he breaks his leg, he becomes useless. Oi, the villagers come to Moshe once again. What a curse has come upon you. These wild horses were not a blessing after all. Now your son is worthless. Moshe says, okay, well, maybe blessing, maybe curse. The next day, some soldiers from the Russian army come through, and they're drafting young Jewish men into the army. But of course, the son is spared because he has a broken leg. Oi, Moshe, what a bracha! So when does this story end? When does it end? It's such a beautiful story because it's about non-judgment, of course, right? It's about saying, let's not use our energy to proclaim that things are either good or bad. But it's not claiming that there is no good and bad, because the farmer is acknowledging, yes, it's good that his son doesn't get drafted into the army, but we don't know the bigger picture yet. We haven't seen the whole thing unfold. So the question is, do we want to be like the villagers who are involved in this constant drama of judging things as they happen, or be like the farmer, the more wise approach, which is let's relax that impulse and let's wait and see how things are unfolding, which of course then brings us to a deeper level of the message of the story, which is that maybe the real bracha and klala, the real blessing and curse, is not from the flow of events unfolding in time, but is rather how we relate to the flowing of events. How do we relate to what is arising in the moment? Do we relate in a way which is a blessing to us and therefore a blessing to others because our interactions with others and the quality of those interactions is dependent on who we are in the moment, how we are relating. So is the blessing that we're focused on, the blessing that we want, is it stuff that happens, or is it the way that we are relating to things that happen? There's a beautiful hint in the Parsha. This opening verse, Re'eh, see, Anochi noten lifnechem hayom, I place before you today bracha uklala, blessing and curse. Hayom bracha uklala literally means today, blessing and curse. In other words, if we take this message to heart, today, meaning right now, Hayom, today, is really a way of saying now, there is the potential for either blessing or curse. How do we choose the blessing? Et habracha asher tishma'u el mitzvot. The blessing that you listen to the commandments. So in the plain Peshat sense, Moses is simply telling them to follow the commandments so that they can choose blessing, right? That's the normative way of looking at it. But we can discover a deeper level if we look at the different meanings of the word mitzvot, which is normally translated as commandments. First, this moment in which we find ourselves is itself a commandment, meaning it is what it is. It has authority. We surrender to this moment or we struggle in vain because this moment has already become what it is. Why would we struggle against something that already is? So how do we do this? How do we surrender into the truth of the moment? This brings us to the second meaning of mitzvah, that of connection rather than commandment. To understand, let's look at this Mishnah from Pirkei Avot. Ben Azai Omer, Ben Azai said, Heve ratz lemitzvah kala chevacha mora. Be quick in performing a minor commandment, just as a major one, uvoreach min ha'avera, and flee from sin. She mitzvah goreret mitzvah, because a mitzvah, a commandment, just leads to another mitzvah. Va'avera goreret avera, and a sin leads to another sin. Shesachar mitzvah mitzvah. The reward for a mitzvah is a mitzvah. Usachar avera avera. And the reward for committing a sin is yet another sin. Now again, this has a plain meaning, but the Hasidic master Rabbi Menachem Nachum of Chernobyl wrote in his book Me'or Einayim, Light of the Eyes, our rabbi said, and he's quoting from the Mishnah we just looked at, the reward for a mitzvah is a mitzvah. This means that God gave us the commandments so that we might cleave to the Blessed One through them. The purpose of the mitzvot is that we are connecting with the divine. Thus, the reward for a mitzvah is the mitzvah itself, in the sense of the similar Aramaic word tzavta, which has the same letters as mitzvah, pretty much, which means connection. Tzavta is the Aramaic word for connection, hinting that through the mitzvot, one connects to the divine, and there is no greater reward than that. That's kind of the point of the whole thing. Rabbi Menachem Nachum points out that mitzvah is related to the Aramaic word tzavta, which means not to command, but to connect. And what is the basic means through which we connect with another being? Asher tishma'u, that you listen. We connect with others by listening, which is why when we want to affirm our connection with someone who is speaking, we say, I hear you. I hear you. So if we hold both meanings of mitzvah in mind, both the truth of the moment as commandment, together with the meaning of connection, a Torah of Awakening emerges. If we want to connect with the command of this moment, that is the truth of how this moment is appearing right now, then we have to listen. Again, listening is a metaphor for being aware in general, for being present. Ha-baracha asher tishma'u. The blessing that you listen, that's the blessing, is the state of being aware. In other words, the deeper blessing beyond the temporary situation comes from being present with what is, regardless of whether it seems like a blessing or a curse on the surface. Accept the blessing and the curse. That's the blessing. Prefer the blessing and not the curse. That's the curse. Re'eh beracha uklala. See, blessing and curse. But in order to do that, we first have to be aware of our situation. We have to see. So while the sense of hearing is a metaphor for connecting, the sense of seeing is a metaphor for understanding. as when we see that something is the case, right? We say, I see, meaning I get it, right? Our tendency, however, is to be like the villagers, stuck in the curse of the automatic, unconscious impulse to judge things as either blessings or curses. To go beyond that, we need to see that impulse within. We need to notice that that impulse is arising to do that, and choose instead to simply listen to the fullness of how it is. Okay, what's going on right now? Without automatic compulsive judging, like the wise farmer. And this is the one judgment we should make, the judging of the judge. When we do that, we free ourselves from the compulsively judging mind. Then we can respond to each moment as it is, without the excess drama. And this brings us to the third meaning of mitzvot, the plain meaning, as the commandments of the Torah. When we see our own impulses, get free from them, and listen attentively to the fullness of what is now, then we can recognize that we are not separate from that fullness. There is one reality, and we can choose to align our actions with that oneness. We can choose to live imperfectly yet ever returning in service of the whole, in service of God. How do we do that? Well, there are many mitzvot, but there are some basic ones at the core. Ve'ahavta l'reacha kamocha, love your neighbor as yourself. This is not merely a mitzvah to have a certain feeling, but to live in communal responsibility toward others, tithing ourselves to give tzedakah, that's charity, hospitality, visiting the sick, and the many other mitzvot of service. And also, ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha, love Hashem, your own inner divinity. Love Hashem, your God, on the literal level, but on the deeper level, this is divinity that we own in a sense. It's ours because it's actually our own identity. This is not merely a mitzvah to have a certain feeling, but to express love of the divine through the concrete forms of avodah, restricting our consumption to the kosher animals, Shabbat and festivals, Torah study, and the many other mitzvot of Jewish practice. Then our actions can truly be, however imperfectly yet ever returning, expressions of God in the world. This is both our true nature and infinitely unfolding potential to accept reality as it unfolds and respond in service of the whole, bringing forth beauty and harmony moment by moment. Shalom. I hope you enjoyed this teaching on Parshat Re'eh. If you did, you can help support by giving the video a like, subscribing to the channel, leaving a comment if you're able, and clicking the bell to get notified when we go live on YouTube 5 days a week. And when you're ready to go deeper, you can head on over to TorahofAwakening.com, where you can become a member and become part of the community. There are also classes for both children and adults, all at TorahofAwakening.com. Until next time, all blessings.